You ever be trying to learn something and then you're able to do all the example problems really well, but you can't actually do something new? So you've already seen the example in class, but then they change one thing. Like maybe you're doing Pythagorean theorem, right? You can do a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. But now when somebody asks you to subtract c squared minus b squared to find a squared, you can't do it. And it might sound like a really simple example, but you'd be surprised at how much, or maybe I'm just stupid, but when you're actually learning stuff in college and you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I can do the procedure this way. But then you don't actually understand the nuances of the procedure. Like, let's say I was doing Dijkstra's algorithm, and that just means I look for something and then I take the next best step. But you have to hold all the steps that you did previously to make sure that you don't backtrack. So you take a look at that and you're like, okay, if I get rid of that, how do I stop myself from going into an infinite loop? And that's still a hard question, allegedly. But, anyways, that's besides the point. I'm not here to talk about CS. I'm here to talk about this idea of you are able to hear something you can understand. You can seemingly understand it by being able to replicate it, but you can't actually act on it, right? We all love to just talk about our problems. It's really easy to do pros and cons and be like, okay, like this went well, this didn't go well, but then the issue is actually coming up with solutions to problems, with actually remediating the issues that you're having at hand. And this is something which I didn't realize was also important for just listening to people. If I was raising somebody and I just thought, okay, let me address their every need. Therefore, they won't have any problems. I see problem, I provide solution. If you're smart, that might go very well. But if you're stupid, like me, and you're like, okay, my daughter is hungry, I get her food. My daughter wants a toy, I get her a toy. I'm pretty sure most people know where I'm going with this. You're spoiling your daughter. You're never going to teach her to learn for herself. You're just going to teach her that you can provide everything for her. And that's a concern for relationships too. There is a account out there called the Mutual Man on Instagram, and he makes cool content in my opinion. But basically goes along the lines of, if your girlfriend was hungry, you'd get her food. Like no shit, like no duh. Same thing as the daughter analogy. But if your girlfriend was like, you need to always give me attention, and you have work and you have personal priorities and you have your own things that you have to do, and you can't always be there and cater to the individual. Or if the person says like, it doesn't mean that you need to give up every single waking moment to be with this person. It just means like they feel lonely, and it doesn't invalidate their feelings just because like you're unable to cater to them at that time. But that's just feedback that's telling you that there's something that you can do, or maybe that you can't do, and that they're just having this feeling. And that's something I feel like I didn't do a very good job of. So I have no problem listening, you know, despite my yapping nature, right? I can hear you. You could ask me like, what was this problem that I had, or like, what is this issue? I'm like, good luck for this thing coming up. But if you actually told me, I'm like, okay, so my girlfriend feels really disconnected from me, I don't really know what to do. You know, maybe the signs were there. I look back on my relationship and I'm just like, I want to make something from this. The big thing that I sat down and I talked to myself about and I thought over and over again is like, how do I make something good of this relationship? Because it's a lot of time that you invest in someone, and it's a lot of effort. And you look back at all of it and you're like, wow, I spent this many hours, I spent this much money, I fostered this connection, and for what? Right? It's over. She's not my wife. My whole life is over because this thing didn't work out. And like that's how you feel like right after the breakup. And you might continue to feel that way. And for me, it's like I can distract myself so much with club work and academics and family, and it's all great. But at some time, I need to just sit down, look myself in the mirror, and be like, okay, I have a life to live. I need to make something of my life, hopefully. And I also just have this general feeling that, you know what, job's not finished. Like there was still work to be done. There was still oh wow, I'm whiffing. But there's still thoughts to be had here that I haven't really processed. I've not given myself the space to process, that I've not sat down and thought about because I didn't want to, because it was painful. because it had to remind me of somebody that I was trying to forget. And you could think that forgetting is healing, but forgetting is giving you the space to look at it with a new lens, a lens that is not so jaded and so focused on putting the pressure or the blame on someone or something, but more trying to turn something which may or may not have been good into something new, right? Trying to make good of an experience. If you grew up playing sports, you're like, okay, I played shittily this way. This was a problem. Like, this person is always beating me over here. Every time that I try to defend this person, they felt like they were in my head. They already knew their actions. But then you need to actually make something of that. I'm like, okay, I have these weaknesses. If I address them, maybe I'll become a better player. Maybe something would go different. Maybe the next time I get into a relationship, I should be able to hear someone. And that's the issue for me. I see somebody talking about an issue that they have, and I think, okay, problem solving mode. And I get this from my father. And maybe it's because I work in a science field, maybe because I work in research, but like everything that I do is related to problem solving in a productive way. And I'm so obsessed with that. Still am. But a lot of people actually know what they think is right for them. They have this internal moral compass where I'm like, okay, I have this idea of how things should be. I may not be doing it right now, but I'll get there eventually, you know? And this pissed me off about her, earnestly, where she knew better. We talk about things and she'd know that the thing that she was doing was wrong, or the thing that she was doing like wasn't in her best interest, but she'd do it anyway. And this imposes a really interesting study where they had this issue with a woman having STDs because they weren't using protection. Prostitutes, sex workers, sorry. But when I came and asked them, and they didn't ask them, sorry. They were just like, okay, so we know that sex work, that, like, sure, you're doing what you're doing. It would be better if you wore condoms. You know, if y'all protected yourselves, 99% effective, preventing the STDs, to put a barrier between you and the other person. But they didn't. And they're like, okay, maybe they don't have access to condoms. They gave them more access to contraceptives and condoms. They made it really accessible. STDs persisted. And then call it a qualitative approach instead of quantitative. Instead of just looking people as statistics and be like, okay, these people are getting more STDs. We need to just provide more capacity to prevent the STDs. They actually sat down and talked to the people, and they're like, okay, why are you not using the condoms? And the answer was they can charge more for it. Why? Because their kids were in daycare, and daycare is really expensive. And the reason they had kids, well, they had unprotected sex. Well, whoop, big whoop. And they decided to keep them. But yeah, daycare is really expensive, and they decided to use the condoms, not use the condoms, so they could charge more and pay for daycare. So they made daycare more accessible, and then they could start charging, affording to not have condoms. To use condoms and take that pay cut. And ultimately, STDs went down over time. And also, the unplanned pregnancies went down as well because people were using protection. So that problem fixed itself over time too. And that's an example of actually listening to people, right? You can see a problem surface level and be like, okay, this is bad. Like, I know this is bad. Anyone could look at it and be like, okay, my moral compass is saying that this isn't good. But to actually see why people do quote unquote bad behaviors, right? Understanding somebody else's moral compass, like what drives people. I'm up at 130 right now, and I have like a big midterm that determines if I pass this class or not tomorrow. And I honestly have racked up like months of technical debt, and I knew it every single time I didn't do an assignment properly, or I was sick for 3 weeks, and I just decided, no, I'm not doing any work. I built up this technical debt, and I knew it was going to bite me in the ass one day, and it's on its way now. But why didn't I just do the smart thing and study? Why do so many people procrastinate when they know that it's bad? And that is the big takeaway, right? That's when you need to like listen to people and think maybe they feel overwhelmed. Maybe they just need that sense of urgency. They grew up with assignments and tasks and pressure from family. It wasn't from themselves, so they never learned how to motivate themselves. Maybe you're like me, and you firmly believe that, these grades just, it isn't the end all be all. And of course I care about it because I need the degree, I want to learn, but I have other priorities like personal enrichment and doing clubs and being social and seeing my family. And I could have studied and had a better work life balance if I worked 7 days a week, but I refuse to. I want my weekends. I want my time with my family. I refuse to compromise that. And if you start to look at that balance and be like, okay, you need to start telling your family maybe to put up an additional boundary, or maybe you need to get off your phone or separate your phone from you because you don't have impulse control. That is starting to understand, right? That's listening. I think I've talked about understanding being a dangerous thing because you might get it wrong. And that kind of sucks, right? It's like high risk, high reward. If you understand someone, as in supposedly you just take a guess and you get it right. Okay, I think that you're thinking this way. I tell you that you're thinking this way. It's like, wow, I feel so seen. I feel so understood. But I'm not always living in your shoes. I'm not guaranteed to have 100% accuracy. So then when you get it wrong, you get misunderstood. And now the person doesn't feel as good about themselves, right? And that's the danger of understanding. But what we can do, if we can't fully understand someone, is just listen to them. Let them tell you how they're feeling. And then you need to go one step further. When some people, they articulate their feelings, right? They say like, I'm hungry. That doesn't necessarily mean I need food like right now. Or like I want food. Some people, they need to scroll on Yelp and then go or Google Maps and find the food, and the food needs to call them and it speaks their name. Or somebody says like, I'm hungry, like I'm willing to eat whatever. Like, I'm so hungry that I will eat literally anything. But these are different connotations that, aren't really clear when somebody just says, I am hungry. But we all know that it's hunger. There's hunger involved. It might be a terrible example, but people have intentions. People know what they mean, right? People have implicit notions behind what they say. And often they're trying to express that, but words are the limiting factor. So just hearing the words is unfortunately not good enough. You need to try to listen to the person, right? You need to try to contextualize and understand where they're coming from and what they mean by the words that they are saying, and then build the next step. Do I need to give a piece of candy? Or do you need to say, hey, no, you've had this much sugar. It's within your best interest, and I need you to understand that it's within your best interest that you don't eat that 30th piece of candy. And maybe, just maybe, people will start to understand that you're acting in somebody's best interest, that you're looking out for them. And that's a good thing, right? And even if they don't grow to appreciate it, you can sit back and say that I took my best effort, that I took the next best step. And I'd argue that that is how you live a life without regret, right? Just to look back at your actions and being like, I'll never know what the future could have held if I chose to do it this way. But in the moment, I did what I thought was best for me. And that's good enough, right? People regret what they, not they're like, oh, wow, I made this one stupid decision. They usually regret like, oh, I wish I did things this way. Right? I wish I tried this. I wish I didn't hold myself back and hold myself in paralysis. So that's a long-winded way of saying that it's important to read between the lines, to try to listen, to try and understand somebody. And to the extent in which you try to understand them is through their own words. And you sharpen yourself, your wits, your understanding of somebody by continuously asking questions. And that's the beauty of it, right? Communication makes the world go round. I wish somebody told me how to communicate, to ask more questions, to be curious, to not expect somebody to have like rules like me that you hold yourself to and then you're like that forever, and I might just be autistic. But you have the balance. And if you're unsure, just ask. And it can really be that simple. I hope, right? Some people are like, oh, I don't like explaining myself. I like to be secretive. I don't want to articulate my feelings. I don't need your help. I know what I need for myself, and I don't feel the need to articulate myself, and you aren't entitled to somebody else's understanding of themselves. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, fortunately, or not. But I say this because reflecting on my relationship, that was the biggest takeaway. That was like my aha moment. That was all the doom scrolling was worth it for this. And I don't want to say it's helped me out monumentously, but it's nice when I have a feeling that somebody's having a really busy day, and you maybe you do the dishes, or you clean at home, or you make them food, right? And people call that sympathy or empathy, compassion, working together, teamwork, like whatever you want to call it. Is that, maybe it is. All those words, all those great words, but it's listening to people's needs. It's understanding. I really wish that I had a better word to be able to describe this phenomenon, but it means a lot, right? To be seen, to feel supported. And if you feel supported in a way in which you feel like you're getting through to someone, but it should be normalized that you should explicitly state your needs, but realistically, if somebody understands what you mean, the communication is good enough between those two people. Doesn't mean you're a good communicator. Just means that you're an effective communicator with that individual. If that makes sense. And for me, in my relationships, what that has meant has I've been so hard-assed of trying to make the person explain themselves in a way that I can understand that's irrefutable and argumentative in a debate club way. Not everybody wants to do debate club. And the goal was never make yourself the most easily able to understand. It's to make yourself understandable to the person in front of you, right? It's good enough. I'm sure I'll post a video talking about how our barriers make us who we are, right? Like the walls that we put up, the standards that we have. But the notion is communication is key. That's my special take on it. Are you hearing the words coming out of someone's mouth? Are you just saying like, oh, I'm hungry? Or are you actually listening and being like, this person's hungry for this food? Or maybe this person just hasn't eaten in a while and they're thinking about food. Or maybe they want the actual experience of just going out and eating with someone. Sometimes it's nice to just be at a dinner, be in the moment with someone. Like, it varies. It really does. And these layers of intention, like, I want a tour, or like, I want dopamine, I'm bored. Right? It's like, I'm thirsty, I'm like, I need a break. I've been at Disneyland for 13 hours and I've been standing on my feet and I just want to sit down, and I associate the water with the break. You just don't know like what the true meaning is behind what people are talking about. But that's what you ask. I'm like, do you want water? It's like, sure. And then the water turns into a break. You live your life. And that's listening to somebody's needs, right? Actually acting on them, hearing what the person is saying, and then listening and acting on it. Maybe this is just a big thing for like follow through. I still am not scripting these videos. So it's a little awkward. I feel the need to fill up the 22 minutes. And maybe that's why I made this a D3 Crashout, because I'm like, I don't want the footage to end abruptly. I feel like that'd be really awkward. But yeah, I'm trying to think of the next way to go without just turning this into me hating on my ex. But yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, am I just a really shit communicator? Like, can I just not articulate my feelings at all? Or did they say one thing and then do another thing and I just couldn't really understand why? And that's what it was. And the reason I bring these things up is because I've been learning about qualitative research in my research cohort. And it was the example of the woman who needed money for daycare. And that was why they perpetuated this cycle. And you break the cycle by understanding the root. So it's like, oh, I did make a video on this where I was talking about addressing the root of the problems. Like, are you going to get mad at the policy, or you get mad at the president that passed the policy, right? Or you don't just get mad at the president, you get mad at the people who put the president in office, and you get mad at the people who started voting on the policy, or the person who proposed the policy, or the people who got the idea around. But there's just so many confounding factors, so many moving pieces and parts that you can never truly be certain of one's origins, and it gets to a point of like diminishing returns, yada yada. This is a really bad example, but bottom line is, you gotta attack things at the root. You know, it's like you should be moving with purpose. So, oh, I lost my train of thought. But you can attack the symptoms all day long. I mean, that's where you start. You get cold. It's not you get a cold. You take cough medicine, and then you start to get better. But your immune system is actually addressing the root problem. Like, you could take cough medicine all day. If your immune system's dysfunctional, like, you're cooked. Weird analogy. But it's like, I can feed somebody every time they're hungry. I can meet and cater to their every single need. But if this person is just doing things for the sake of other people, right? If somebody's value system makes it so that they'll never be happy within themselves, because somebody else is pulling the strings, like, that's the thing that you need to be getting at. And the realization moment for me in my relationship was that it really never was about me. It was this notion of somebody else. They saw me as conflict, right? They saw me as like a window into their own insecurity of what they don't like about themselves, of that they have to improve and become a better person. And that's not something that they necessarily wanted to do at that time, right? They just wanted to enjoy the life that they did. They wanted to get validated for who they were at the time, and they wanted to feel good about themselves. And that's just something that I couldn't provide. I didn't listen to those needs to that at the time. I just saw them. I'm like, okay, hey, this is problem. Don't do that. This is problem. Let's solve it this way. And they knew what they were doing wasn't good for them, but they did it anyway. And that was just something that I couldn't understand. And that's the crux of this whole thing. Okay, I yapped for a while. It's bad, but yeah, I hope something in there was insightful or interesting, because I blinked out hella bad. Okay, bye.